The telegram arrived at dawn with news that would change everything. Samuel Wright was dead, trampled by a spooked horse 3 days past, and his daughter Olivia was inheriting the sprawling cattle ranch outside Ouray, Colorado in the summer of 1882. Olivia Wright stood on the porch of the ranch house that morning, her black mourning dress stark against the pale wood, watching as the 12 ranch hands gathered near the bunkhouse. She had ridden hard from Denver the moment she received word of her father's death, arriving just in time to oversee his burial on the hill overlooking the property he had spent 20 years building. Now, barely 2 days after laying him to rest, she faced a challenge she had not anticipated. Her father's foreman, a grizzled man named Tucker, approached with his hat in his hands and regret etched across his weathered face. "Miss Wright, the men have been talking," Tucker said, his voice apologetic but firm. "They are good workers, loyal to your father's memory, but they cannot work for a woman. It is not personal, you understand. It is just the way things are done out here." Olivia felt her chest tighten, but she kept her expression steady. She had expected resistance, perhaps some testing of her authority, but not outright abandonment. "My father built this ranch from nothing. These men know the operation inside and out. Surely they can see that the ranch needs experienced hands, regardless of who signs their pay." Tucker shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "That is the thing, Miss Wright. Most of these fellows have worked ranches all their lives, always under a man's direction. They do not believe a woman can handle the hard decisions, the dangerous work, the way things need to be run. They have already packed their gear. They will finish out the week if you need them to, but then they are moving on." The words hit her like a physical blow, but Olivia refused to let it show. She had grown up on this ranch, had learned to rope and brand alongside her father's men during summer visits from boarding school. After her mother died when she was 12, she had spent every spare moment here, soaking up everything her father could teach her about running cattle, managing land, reading weather and water. But she was also realistic. She knew that knowledge meant nothing to men who could not see past her gender. "Tell them they can leave today if they wish," she said quietly. "I will pay them through the end of the month. I will not keep men who do not want to be here." Tucker nodded and turned to go, but paused. "There is one fellow, though, that drifter your father hired on about 6 weeks back. Cade Newton is his name. He is asking to speak with you." Olivia remembered the name from her father's last letter. He had written about hiring a young cowboy who had impressed him with his way with horses and his willingness to take on any task without complaint. She nodded. "Send him up." She watched as Tucker returned to the group, saw the men dispersing toward the bunkhouse to collect their belongings. Then a tall figure detached from the shadows of the barn and began walking toward the house. Cade Newton was younger than she expected, perhaps 25 to her 22 years, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of storm clouds. He walked with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. He wore simple working clothes, a faded blue shirt and worn denim, but he carried himself with a quiet dignity that made her stand a little straighter. "Miss Wright," he said, removing his hat as he reached the porch steps. His voice was deep and steady, with a hint of an accent she could not quite place. "I wanted to speak with you before making any decisions about staying or going." "I appreciate that, Mr. Newton," Olivia replied, gesturing for him to come up onto the porch. "My father spoke highly of you in his letters. He said you had a gift with the horses." A flicker of something, grief perhaps, crossed Cade's face. "Your father was a good man, fair and honest." "I am sorry for your loss. Thank you." She took a breath, steadying herself against the wave of sorrow that threatened to overwhelm her. Tucker tells me the other hands are leaving because they cannot work for a woman. I assume you have similar concerns." Cade was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes studying her with an intensity that made her acutely aware of every detail of her appearance, from her wind-blown hair to the dust on her hem. "I have worked for all kinds of bosses in my time," he said finally. "Good ones and bad ones, honest ones and cheats. What I learned is that it does not matter much whether they wear trousers or skirts. What matters is whether they know the work and whether they treat their people right." Olivia felt a spark of hope kindle in her chest. "And you think I might know the work? Your father talked about you constantly," Cade said, and there was the ghost of a smile on his lips. "How you could rope a calf faster than most men twice your age. How you had a head for numbers and could calculate feed costs in your sleep. How you loved this land the way he did. So yes, I think you might know the work." He paused. "The question is whether you are willing to do it, even when it gets hard. Running a ranch is not just paperwork and planning. It is long days in the saddle, dangerous animals, and decisions that can make or break you." "I know that," Olivia said, lifting her chin. "I grew up here. I know what it takes." "Then I will stay and work for you," Cade said simply. "At least through the summer until you get your footing. After that, we can see how things stand." The relief that flooded through her was so intense it made her dizzy. One experienced hand was not enough to run a ranch this size, but it was a start. More than that, it was a statement of faith that meant more to her than she could express. "Thank you, Mr. Newton. I cannot tell you what this means to me." "Call me Cade," he said. "And you should know I am not doing this out of charity. I need the work and I like it here. Your father gave me a chance when other ranchers turned me away. I figure I owe it to his memory to help his daughter if I can." "Why did other ranchers turn you away?" Olivia asked, her curiosity getting the better of her caution. Cade's expression shuddered slightly. "I had some trouble down in New Mexico territory. Nothing criminal, but it left a mark on my reputation. Your father did not care about gossip. He judged me on my work, and that is all I ask from you." Olivia nodded slowly. She had no choice but to trust him, at least for now. "Fair enough. Can you recommend any other hands who might be willing to work here?" "There are a few men in town who might be willing to give it a try if the pay is decent," Cade said. "And there is a possibility I know of, though it might not sit well with some folks." "Tell me." "There is a family, Mexican settlers, who have been trying to homestead a section of land about 15 miles south of here. The father is a skilled vaquero, and his 2 sons are nearly grown. They are good with cattle and horses, and they work hard. But they are struggling to make their claim productive. If you offered them wages and maybe some help getting established, they might be willing to work for you part-time." Olivia considered this. She knew that many ranchers in the area looked down on Mexican workers, paid them less, and treated them poorly. But her father had always taught her that skill and character mattered more than background. "Set up a meeting. I would like to speak with them." "I will ride out this afternoon," Cade promised. "In the meantime, what do you want me to focus on?" "The horses," Olivia said immediately. "We have 30 head that need breaking for the fall sale, and I cannot do that alone. After that, I need an assessment of the cattle. Father mentioned in his last letter that he was worried about sickness in the herd, but he died before he could investigate further." Cade frowned. "I will check them over. If there is disease, we need to contain it fast." They talked for another half-hour, discussing the immediate needs of the ranch and drawing up a plan of action. Olivia found herself impressed by Cade's practical knowledge and his ability to ask the right questions. He did not talk down to her or try to take over, but he also did not hesitate to offer his opinion when she asked for it. By the time he headed back to the barn, She felt the first stirrings of something she had not felt since receiving the telegram about her father's death. Hope. The next few days passed in a blur of hard work and constant challenges. The other ranch hands departed as promised, some with sheepish apologies, others with barely concealed disdain. Olivia watched them go without comment, then rolled up her sleeves and threw herself into the work. She and Cade fell into a rhythm, rising before dawn to feed the animals, then spending the days tackling whatever task was most urgent. He taught her things her father never had, tricks for gentling a wild horse or reading the subtle signs of illness in cattle. She surprised him with her stamina and her willingness to tackle even the dirtiest, most difficult jobs. On the fourth day, Cade returned from his trip south with the Mexican family in tow. Miguel Sanchez was a compact man in his 40s with calloused hands and a dignified bearing. His sons, Carlos and Diego, were 18 and 16 respectively, lean and quiet but clearly knowledgeable about ranch work. Olivia met with them in the ranch house, offering fair wages and a promise to help them file proper paperwork for their homestead claim. Miguel regarded her with cautious respect, clearly surprised by her directness and her willingness to treat them as equals. "We will work hard for you, Señorita Wright," Miguel said, his English heavily accented but clear. "But I must know, if there is trouble with other ranchers because you hire us, will you stand with us?" Olivia did not hesitate. "I will. My father built this ranch on the principle of fairness. I intend to honor that." Miguel smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him. "Then we accept." "When do we start?" "Tomorrow," Olivia said. "We have a lot of ground to cover." With the addition of the Sanchez family, the ranch began to function again. It was still understaffed, but the work got done. Olivia found herself spending most of her time in the saddle alongside Cade, checking fences, moving cattle, and dealing with the 100 small crises that arose daily. She was exhausted every night, falling into bed with aching muscles and sun-burned skin, but she also felt more alive than she had in years. This was where she belonged, doing work that mattered, fighting for something her father had built. As the weeks passed, she became increasingly aware of Cade. He was always there, a steady presence at her side, offering quiet encouragement when things went wrong and celebrating small victories with a rare, genuine smile. He never questioned her authority in front of the other workers, but he also was not afraid to challenge her decisions when they were alone, pushing her to think through problems from different angles. She found herself valuing his opinion more than she wanted to admit, and looking forward to the moments when they would sit together after a long day, sharing a simple meal and talking about everything from ranch business to their childhoods. One evening in late July, after a particularly grueling day spent rounding up strays in the high country, they sat together on the porch watching the sun set behind the mountains. The air was cool and sweet with the scent of pine, and Olivia felt a contentment she had not experienced in a long time. "You have done well," Cade said quietly. "Your father would be proud." Olivia glanced at him, surprised by the emotion in his voice. "I could not have done it without you, you know that," he shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "You would have found a way. You are tougher than you think." "Maybe," she said, "but I am glad I did not have to do it alone." She hesitated, then asked the question that had been nagging at her for weeks. "Why did you really stay, Cade? You could have found work anywhere. Why take a chance on me?" He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then he turned to face her, his gray eyes serious. "Because when I saw you standing on this porch that first morning, looking so determined and so alone, I saw something I recognized. Someone who had been knocked down but was not going to stay down. Someone who was willing to fight for what mattered, even when the odds were stacked against them." He paused, I respected that. I still do. Olivia felt her breath catch in her throat. The way he was looking at her made her acutely aware of how close they were sitting, how the fading light cast shadows across his strong features. "Thank you," she whispered. Cade reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered on her cheek, warm and calloused. "Olivia," he said, her name sounding different on his lips, more intimate somehow. "I need you to know something. I did not plan for this. I did not plan to care about you, but I do. More than I should, probably." Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Cade, You do not have to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I know the situation is complicated. You are my boss and you have enough on your plate without adding this to it. I just needed you to know. I needed to be honest." Olivia surprised herself by reaching up and covering his hand with hers, pressing it against her cheek. "It is not complicated," she said softly. "Or maybe it is, but I do not care. I care about you too. I have for a while now, but I was afraid to admit it." The smile that spread across Cade's face was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Are you sure?" "I am sure," she said, and then his lips were on hers, gentle at first, then deeper as she responded, her arms coming up to circle his neck. The kiss was everything she had imagined and more, full of longing and promise and a tenderness that made her chest ache. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard, and Cade rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "I have wanted you to," Olivia replied, and laughed at the joy that bubbled up inside her. For the first time since her father's death, she felt like herself again, like the future held something more than just survival. They sat together on the porch until the stars came out, talking quietly about everything and nothing, stealing kisses and making plans. It was not a practical romance, Olivia knew. She was a woman running a ranch in a world that did not want to see her succeed, and Cade was a drifter with a past he would not fully share. But she also knew that what they had was real, and that was enough. The next morning brought a new challenge. Olivia was in the barn checking on a mare who was due to foal when Diego came running in, his face flushed with exertion. "Señorita Wright, you need to come quick. There are men at the north fence line. They are cutting the wire." Olivia felt a jolt of alarm. Fence cutting was a serious problem in cattle country, often a precursor to rustling or worse. She grabbed her rifle from the tack room and followed Diego outside, where Cade was already saddling horses. His expression was grim. "How many men?" he asked Diego. "3, maybe 4, the boy replied. "Papa sent Carlos to watch them while I came to get you." They rode hard toward the north pasture, Olivia's mind racing. She had heard stories of ranchers who tried to intimidate women landowners into selling out, using everything from legal pressure to outright violence. She had hoped that her father's reputation would protect her, at least for a while, but apparently someone had decided to test her. When they reached the fence line, they found Miguel and Carlos watching from a distance as 3 men methodically cut through the barbed wire strands. Olivia recognized one of them, a ranch hand from the neighboring property owned by a man named Harlan Jessup. Jessup had made an offer to buy her father's ranch years ago and had been refused. Apparently, he thought Samuel Wright's death was an opportunity to try again. Olivia rode forward, her rifle across her saddle, Cade at her side. "That is far enough," she called out, her voice steady and clear. "You are on my property, destroying my fence. I suggest you stop right now." The men looked up, and one of them, a burly fellow with a scarred face, laughed. "Well, look at this. The little lady has a gun. You know how to use that, sweetheart." "I do," Olivia said coolly. "My father taught me. Would you like a demonstration?" The man's smile faded. He glanced at his companions, then back at Olivia. "Mr. Jessup says this fence is in the wrong place. Says it cuts across his land." "Mr. Jessup is lying," Olivia replied. "The property line was surveyed and recorded by the county. The fence is exactly where it should be. Now you can ride back and tell him that if he has a problem, he can take it up with me directly. But if I catch anyone cutting my fence again, I will have the sheriff out here." "Understood." The scarred man's expression turned ugly. "You think you can run this place, little girl? You think a woman can stand up to men like Mr. Jessup? He is going to eat you alive." Before Olivia could respond, Cade urged his horse forward, positioning himself between her and the men. His voice was quiet but carried a note of danger that made even the scarred man pause. "The lady told you to leave. I suggest you do it, now." "And who are you?" the man demanded. "Someone who is not going to ask twice," Cade said. His hand rested casually on the gun at his hip, and there was something in his eyes that made it clear he knew how to use it. The three men exchanged glances, clearly weighing their options. Finally, the scarred man spat on the ground and mounted his horse. "This is not over," he said to Olivia. "Mr. Jessup does not give up easy." "Neither do I," Olivia replied. They watched as the men rode off, then Cade turned to her, his expression concerned. "You know this is just the beginning. Jessup is testing you, seeing if you will fold under pressure." "I know," Olivia said, "but I am not going anywhere." She looked at Miguel and his sons. "Can you repair the fence?" "Si, señorita," Miguel said. "We will have it fixed before dark." As they rode back to the ranch house, Olivia felt the weight of what she had taken on settle more heavily on her shoulders. Running the ranch was hard enough, but now she was facing active opposition from a neighbor who clearly intended to drive her out. She glanced at Cade, riding beside her, and drew strength from his presence. Whatever came next, at least she would not be facing it alone. That evening, she and Cade sat down and made plans. If Jessup was going to escalate things, they needed to be prepared. They decided to hire 2 more hands, men who could help patrol the property and provide extra security. Cade knew of a couple of former soldiers who had settled in the area and might be looking for work. Olivia also decided to ride into town and speak with the sheriff, establishing a record of Jessup's harassment in case things got worse. The trip to Ouray the next day was eye-opening. The small mountain town was bustling with miners and merchants, but when Olivia walked into the sheriff's office, she was met with barely concealed skepticism. Sheriff Donovan was a heavy-set man in his 50s who listened to her complaint with a bored expression, then leaned back in his chair. "Look, Miss Wright, I am sorry about your father. He was a good man. But running a ranch is not easy, especially for a woman. Maybe you should consider Jessup's offer. He is a successful rancher and he would take good care of your father's land." Olivia felt anger flare in her chest. "My father's land is my land now, Sheriff, and I am not selling. I came here to report a crime. Are you going to do your job or not?" Donovan's expression hardened. "I will make a note of your complaint, but unless you have witnesses who are willing to testify, there is not much I can do. And I will tell you right now, most folks in this county are not going to take kindly to you making accusations against Harlan Jessup." "I have witnesses," Olivia said firmly. "Good men who saw what happened. If it comes to it, they will testify." "If you say so," Donovan replied, clearly unconvinced. "But my advice stands. Think about selling while you still can." Olivia left the sheriff's office feeling shaken but determined. She met Cade at the general store where he was picking up supplies. One look at her face told him how the meeting had gone. "He was not helpful, I take it," Cade said. "He was worse than not helpful. He practically told me to give up and sell out." She took a breath, steadying herself. "But I am not going to. I am going to fight this, Cade, whatever it takes." He smiled at her, pride evident in his eyes. "I know you are, and I will be right there with you." They spent the rest of the day in town, and Cade introduced her to the two former soldiers he had mentioned, Jack Miller and Thomas Reed. Both men were in their 30s, weathered and competent, and they agreed to come out to the ranch the next day to discuss terms. Olivia also stopped at the land office to confirm the property boundaries, obtaining official copies of the survey documents in case she needed them later. By the time they rode back to the ranch, the sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Despite the challenges she was facing, Olivia felt a sense of rightness about what she was doing. This was her home, her inheritance, and she would defend it with everything she had. The following weeks brought a subtle shift in the dynamics at the ranch. With Jack and Thomas added to the crew, there were enough hands to keep the operation running smoothly and maintain a watch on the property. Jessup made no further overt moves, but there were signs of his continued interest. Cattle that wandered too close to his property were not returned, and rumors circulated in town that Olivia was failing, that the ranch was falling apart without a man in charge. Olivia ignored the gossip and focused on the work. The summer was passing quickly, and there was a lot to be done before fall. The cattle needed to be moved to higher pastures, the hay had to be cut and stored, and the horses had to be finished for the sale in September. She worked from dawn until well past dark most days, and often fell into bed too exhausted to do more than exchange a few words with Cade before sleep claimed her. But there were also moments of unexpected joy. One afternoon, she and Cade were working together to break a particularly stubborn young stallion. The horse was beautiful, a buckskin with intelligent eyes and a spirit that refused to be crushed. Olivia had been working with him for weeks, using the patient, gentle methods her father had taught her, and today he finally accepted the saddle. "Go ahead," Cade encouraged, holding the horse's head. "You have earned this." Olivia mounted carefully, feeling the stallion's muscles bunch beneath her. For a moment she thought he might explode, but then he settled, responding to her light touch on the reins. She walked him around the corral, then urged him into a trot. The horse moved like water, smooth and powerful, and Olivia felt a surge of pure elation. When she finally dismounted, Cade was grinning at her. "You are incredible, you know that," she laughed, flushed with success and the sheer pleasure of the moment. "He is incredible. This horse is going to bring a good price." "I was not talking about the horse," Cade said, and pulled her into his arms. They kissed in the dusty corral surrounded by curious horses, and Olivia felt like the luckiest woman alive. Their relationship deepened as the summer wore on. They stole moments together whenever they could. Rides up into the high country where they could be alone, quiet conversations under the stars, kisses that left them both breathless and wanting more. Olivia knew that people in town were talking, that her reputation was already complicated by her decision to run the ranch alone, but she did not care. Cade made her happy in a way she had never experienced, and she was not willing to give that up for the sake of appearances. In late August, Harlan Jessup made his move. He rode up to the ranch house one morning with 4 of his men, all of them armed. Olivia was in the barn when Miguel came running to alert her, and she hurried out to find Jessup dismounting in front of the porch. He was a big man, tall and broad-shouldered, with silver hair and a face that might have been handsome if not for the cold calculation in his eyes. "Miss Wright," he said, touching the brim of his hat in a mockery of courtesy. "I thought it was time we had a talk." Olivia stood her ground, aware of Cade and the others gathering behind her. "If you have something to say, Mr. Jessup, say it and be on your way. I have work to do." Jessup smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You are a persistent thing, I will give you that. Your father was the same way. Stubborn. But stubbornness only gets you so far, girl. You are in over your head here. This ranch is too much for you to handle, and we both know it. What I know is that my ranch is running just fine, Olivia replied. And I am not interested in selling, no matter how many fences you cut or how many rumors you spread. Jessup's expression darkened. Careful, Miss Wright, you are making some serious accusations. Am I? Olivia met his gaze steadily. Then why are you here? I am here to make you a fair offer, Jessup said. I will buy this place for a good price, more than it is worth in its current state. You can take the money, go back to Denver, and live a comfortable life. No more struggling to make ends meet, no more fighting battles you cannot win. The answer is no, Olivia said flatly. This ranch is not for sale. Not to you, not to anyone. Jessup's face flushed with anger. You are making a mistake. You cannot run this place without experienced men, and no self-respecting cowboy is going to work for a woman. You are going to fail, and when you do, I will be here to pick up the pieces. But by then, I will not be nearly as generous. Is that a threat? Cade asked, stepping forward. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. Jessup turned his attention to Cade, his eyes narrowing. And you are the drifter who decided to throw in with her. I have heard about you, Newton. Word is you had some trouble down south, something about a shooting. Word is a lot of things, Cade said evenly, but the lady has given you her answer. It is time for you to leave. For a moment the tension was so thick Olivia thought violence might erupt. Then Jessup laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Fine, have it your way, but do not come crying to me when everything falls apart. He mounted his horse and looked down at Olivia. You are just like your father. Too proud for your own good. It got him killed, and it will get you ruined. He rode off with his men, leaving Olivia shaking with a mixture of rage and fear. Cade put a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. He is trying to scare you, do not let him. I am not scared, Olivia said, though she was not entirely sure that was true. But I am angry. How dare he come here and threaten me on my own land? He is desperate, Cade said. And desperate men make mistakes. We just need to be ready when he does. They increased security around the ranch, with Jack and Thomas taking turns on night watch. Olivia also made sure that all of the legal documentation regarding the property was in order, and she visited a lawyer in town to draw up a will, just in case. The lawyer, an elderly man named Silas Green, was more sympathetic than the sheriff had been. Your father was a friend of mine, Green said as he prepared the documents. He was a good man, and he was proud of you. Do not let Jessup or anyone else tell you that you cannot do this. You have every right to run that ranch. Thank you, Olivia said, feeling a rush of gratitude. It helps to know that someone believes in me. More people than you think, Green replied. Jessup has made himself unpopular with his tactics. There are folks who would be happy to see you succeed, just to spite him. Armed with this knowledge, Olivia returned to the ranch with renewed determination. The days were getting shorter, and the fall work was reaching its peak. She and Cade spent long hours in the saddle, moving cattle down from the high pastures and preparing for the upcoming sale. The physical work was grueling, but Olivia found it satisfying in a way that nothing else was. Every day she proved to herself and to the world that she was capable of running this ranch. The horse sale in September was a turning point. Olivia brought her best stock to town, including the buckskin stallion she and Cade had trained. The auction drew buyers from all over the region, and Olivia stood in the ring with her horses, ignoring the stares and whispers. When the buckskin came up for bidding, there was a moment of tense silence, and then the offers started coming. The horse sold for 3 times what she had expected, and Olivia felt a surge of vindication. Cade found her afterward, his eyes shining with pride. "You did it. You showed them all." "We did it," Olivia corrected, pulling him into a quick embrace. "I could not have done any of this without you." "You could have," Cade said seriously, "but I am glad you did not have to." That night, they celebrated with the crew at a small restaurant in town. It was the first time Olivia had allowed herself to relax in months, and she found herself laughing and joking with the men who had become more than just employees. They were a team, a family of sorts, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude for each of them. As the evening wound down, Cade walked her back to the hotel where she was staying. The mountain air was crisp and cold, hinting at the winter to come, and the stars were brilliant overhead. They stopped outside the hotel entrance, neither of them quite ready to say goodnight. "Olivia," Cade said, his voice serious, "there is something I need to tell you about my past." She tensed slightly but nodded. "All right." He took a breath. "A few years ago, I was working on a ranch in New Mexico. There was a foreman there, a man who liked to use his fists on anyone he thought was beneath him. One day, I saw him beating one of the younger hands, a kid barely 16. I stepped in, told him to stop. He pulled a gun on me." Cade paused, his jaw tight. "I shot him. It was self-defense and the law cleared me, but the rancher was friends with the foreman. He made sure everyone in the territory knew I had killed a man, made it sound like I was dangerous, unpredictable. After that, it was hard to find work." Olivia reached out and took his hand. "Thank you for telling me, but it does not change how I feel about you. You did the right thing, protecting someone who could not protect themselves. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." Cade looked at her with such intensity that her breath caught. "I love you, Olivia. I did not plan to, and I know it complicates everything, but I do. I love you and I want to be with you, not just as your employee but as your partner, in every way." Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes. "I love you too. I think I have for a while now, but I was afraid to say it. Afraid that it would change things between us or make the situation more difficult." "It will change things," Cade said, a smile breaking through his serious expression. "But in a good way. At least I hope so." He pulled her close and they kissed under the starlight, a promise and a beginning all wrapped into one perfect moment. When they finally pulled apart, Olivia was laughing and crying at the same time. "What are we going to do?" "We are going to keep doing what we have been doing," Cade said. "Running the ranch, building something together. And when you are ready, when the time is right, I want to marry you. I want to make this official, make you my wife and spend the rest of my life at your side." "Yes," Olivia whispered. "Yes to all of it." They stood there for a long time, holding each other, making plans and dreaming about the future. It was not a conventional courtship, and Olivia knew that their marriage would raise eyebrows and cause talk. But she also knew that she had found something rare and precious, a love that was built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine partnership. That was worth any amount of gossip. The winter that followed was harsh, with heavy snows that made travel difficult and forced them to hunker down at the ranch for weeks at a time. But it was also a time of unexpected intimacy and joy. Cade moved his belongings into the main house, and they spent the long evenings planning for the spring, talking about improvements they wanted to make and dreams they wanted to pursue. Olivia taught him to read better, something he had never learned properly as a child, and he taught her to play the harmonica, filling the house with simple, haunting melodies. In late February, they were married in a simple ceremony at the ranch, with Sila's Green officiating and the crew in attendance. Olivia wore a dress of deep green velvet, and Cade wore a new suit that made him look almost uncomfortable. But when he took her hand and spoke his vows, his voice was steady and sure, and Olivia felt a happiness so profound it made her chest ache. "I promise to stand by you," Cade said, his gray eyes locked on hers. "To support you in all things, to be your partner in work and in life. I promise to love you, honor you, and build a future with you. From this day forward, you are my wife, my companion, and my best friend." Olivia spoke her own vows through tears, promising to love and cherish him, to build a life together based on trust and mutual respect. When Silas pronounced them married and Cade kissed her, the small gathering erupted in cheers, and Olivia felt like her heart might burst with joy. The months that followed were not easy, but they were good. Jessup made a few more half-hearted attempts to cause trouble, but each time, Olivia and Cade stood firm, and eventually he seemed to accept that she was not going anywhere. The ranch continued to prosper, and Olivia's reputation as a capable rancher slowly grew. There were still those who disapproved of a woman running such an operation, and even more who questioned her marriage to a man with a questionable past. But there were also those who respected what she had built. By the spring of 1884, Olivia was pregnant with their first child. The news filled both of them with a mixture of excitement and terror. Cade became fiercely protective, trying to convince her to take it easy, while Olivia insisted on continuing to work as long as she was able. They compromised, with Olivia handling more of the business and administrative side of the ranch, while Cade took on more of the physical labor. Their son was born on a warm September evening, after a long and difficult labor that left Olivia exhausted but elated. They named him Samuel, after her father, and Cade held the tiny, squalling infant with a look of such wonder and love that Olivia fell in love with him all over again. "He is perfect," Cade whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "You are perfect. Thank you for giving me this, Olivia. Thank you for giving me a family. We are in this together," Olivia said, reaching up to touch his face. "Always." The years that followed were full and busy. They added to the herd, built new outbuildings, and improved the irrigation system. Miguel's sons grew into skilled vaqueros, and eventually Miguel himself became the ranch foreman, a position he filled with pride and dedication. Jack and Thomas stayed on as well, becoming trusted friends and advisors. In 1886, Olivia gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Grace, who inherited their father's gray eyes and their mother's determination. The ranch house was suddenly filled with the sounds of children, laughter and crying, and the constant patter of small feet. Cade proved to be a devoted father, patient and gentle with the children, teaching them to ride almost as soon as they could walk. As the children grew, so did the ranch's reputation. Olivia became known not just as a woman who had succeeded in a man's world, but as a skilled rancher and businesswoman in her own right. She was invited to join the local Cattlemen's Association, the first woman ever to receive such an honor, and her opinions on breeding and land management were sought by other ranchers in the region. Harlan Jessup, meanwhile, overextended himself with bad investments and was eventually forced to sell his ranch. Olivia did not gloat when she heard the news, but she did feel a sense of vindication. She had outlasted him, proved him wrong, and built something enduring. One evening in the spring of 1890, Olivia and Cade stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching their children play in the yard. Samuel was nearly 6 now, tall and serious like his grandfather, while the twins were 4, wild and joyful and constantly getting into mischief. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and the air was sweet with the scent of new grass and wildflowers. "You ever regret it?" Olivia asked quietly. "Staying here with me instead of moving on?" Cade turned to her, surprise evident on his face. "Not for a single moment. This is the life I always wanted, even when I did not know what that life looked like. You gave me a home, Olivia, a family, a purpose. I have never been happier." She leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body against hers. "I feel the same way. When I came back here after Father died, I thought I was just trying to save the ranch. I did not realize I was also finding my future." "Our future," Cade corrected gently. "Everything we built together." They stood there for a long time, watching the sun sink below the horizon and the first stars appear. Their life was not without challenges, would never be without challenges, but they faced them together, as partners and equals. The ranch that had once seemed like an impossible burden had become a legacy, something they could pass on to their children and their children's children. Samuel ran up to the porch, his face flushed with excitement. "Papa, Mama, look what I found." He held up a smooth, oval stone polished by water and time. "It is from the creek. Can I keep it?" "Of course," Olivia said, ruffling his hair. "It is beautiful." The twins came running up behind their brother, clamoring for attention, and Cade scooped them both up, one under each arm, making them shriek with laughter. Olivia watched her family, her heart full to overflowing with love and gratitude. She thought of her father, buried on the hill overlooking the ranch, and sent up a silent thank you. He had given her this land, this opportunity, and she had taken it and made it into something more than either of them could have imagined. As they went inside for supper, the house warm and bright with lamplight, Olivia thought about the day the hands had quit, leaving her alone and uncertain. She thought about Cade, saying simply that he would stay and work for her. That decision, that moment of faith, had changed everything. It had given her not just a worker, but a partner, a husband, a father for her children. It had given her a life she loved, full of purpose and meaning. Years continued to pass in a blur of seasons and milestones. Samuel grew into a responsible young man who shared his grandfather's love of the land and his father's way with horses. At 18, he was already helping to manage the ranch, and Olivia knew that one day he would take over completely. The twins, now 14, were as different as night and day. Emma was practical and level-headed, with a gift for numbers that made her invaluable when it came to the ranch's finances. Grace was artistic and dreamy, more interested in sketching the mountains than herding cattle, but she had a gift for gentling even the wildest animals. In 1896, Olivia gave birth to their fourth child, another son they named after Cade. The pregnancy was unexpected, coming 10 years after the twins, but the baby was healthy and strong, and his arrival brought new joy to the household. Young Cade was doted on by his older siblings, who took turns entertaining him and teaching him things. Through it all, the ranch continued to thrive. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, dealt with disease outbreaks and market fluctuations, but they always came through. The partnership between Olivia and Cade remained the foundation of everything, a relationship built on love and respect and absolute trust. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1895, Cade took Olivia on a trip to Denver, their first real vacation in years. They stayed in a fine hotel, ate at fancy restaurants, and spent their days exploring the growing city. But by the end of the week, they were both ready to go home, back to the ranch and the mountains and the life they had built. "I do not need fancy hotels," Cade said as they stood on the train platform, waiting for the journey back to Ouray. "All I need is you, our children, and that ranch. That is where I belong." "Me too," Olivia agreed, taking his hand. "Everything that matters is there." As they rode the train through the mountains, watching the familiar landscape unfold around them, Olivia reflected on how far they had come. She was no longer the scared, grieving young woman who had arrived at the ranch to find her father dead and her inheritance in jeopardy. She was a successful rancher, a wife, a mother, and a respected member of her community. And she owed so much of that to the man sitting beside her, the cowboy who had chosen to stay when everyone else left. The final years of the 19th century brought new changes and challenges. The West was becoming more settled, more civilized, and the wild, untamed quality that had defined Olivia's youth was slowly fading. There were more fences, more laws, more people crowding into spaces that had once seemed limitless. But the Wright Ranch endured, adapting to the changing times while holding on to the values that had always guided it: hard work, fairness, and respect for the land. In 1902, Samuel married a schoolteacher from Ouray named Laura, and they built a small house on the ranch property. A year later, they gave Olivia and Cade their first grandchild, a red-faced, howling boy named Henry. Holding her grandson for the first time, Olivia felt the circle of life complete itself. This was what it had all been for, this legacy, this continuation of family and tradition. Emma surprised everyone by deciding to study law, becoming one of the first women in Colorado to pass the bar exam. She opened a practice in Ouray, specializing in land and water rights, and became an advocate for small ranchers and homesteaders. Grace, true to her artistic nature, moved to Santa Fe to study painting, though she returned home frequently and filled the ranch house with beautiful depictions of the landscapes she loved. Young Cade, growing up surrounded by older siblings and their accomplishments, carved out his own path. He had his father's quiet strength and his mother's determination, and by the time he was 16, he was one of the best ranch hands on the property. He also had a gift for innovation, constantly coming up with new ideas for improving efficiency and productivity. As Olivia moved into her 60s, she gradually handed over more of the day-to-day operations to Samuel and young Cade, though she remained involved in all major decisions. Cade, now in his mid-60s as well, was still active on the ranch, though he moved a bit slower and spent more time teaching the grandchildren than doing heavy labor himself. On a summer evening in 1910, Olivia and Cade celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and the extended ranch family that had grown over the years. The party was held in the yard behind the ranch house, with tables laden with food and lanterns strung between the trees. As the sun set and someone pulled out a fiddle, Olivia found herself standing at the edge of the celebration, watching the people she loved most in the world laugh and dance and enjoy each other's company. Cade came up beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything," Olivia said softly. "All the years, all the struggles, all the joy. I am thinking about how grateful I am for all of it. Even the hard parts," Cade asked with a slight smile. "Especially the hard parts," Olivia replied. "They made us stronger, they made us who we are." "We built something good here," Cade said, his voice full of quiet pride. "Something that is going to last long after we are gone." "We did," Olivia agreed. "Together." They stood there for a while longer watching their family, then Cade pulled her out onto the makeshift dance floor. They moved slowly to the music, holding each other close, and Olivia thought about the scared young widow and the drifter cowboy they had once been. They had come so far, overcome so much, and built a love story that had become legendary in the valley. As the evening wore on and the stars came out overhead, Olivia looked up at Cade, this man who had chosen to stay when everyone else left, who had believed in her when no one else would, who had loved her through every triumph and every trial. His hair was silver now, his face lined with age and experience, but his eyes were the same storm gray that had captured her heart all those years ago. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" Cade asked, puzzled. "For staying, for choosing me, for building this life with me." Cade smiled, that rare, genuine smile that still made her heart skip a beat. "I would make the same choice 1,000 times over. You are the best decision I ever made, Olivia Newton." They danced until the music stopped and the guests began to drift away, leaving them alone under the stars. The ranch house stood solid and welcoming behind them, filled with decades of memories and the promise of many more to come. The mountains rose dark against the night sky, eternal and unchanging, witnessing the love story that had unfolded in their shadow. As they walked hand in hand back to the house, their steps slow and comfortable, Olivia felt a deep sense of contentment. Her father would have been proud of what she had accomplished, of the legacy she had built and protected. But more than that, he would have been happy that she had found love, had created a family, had lived a full and meaningful life. The hands had quit when they saw a woman boss, unwilling to stay and work for someone they deemed unfit. But one cowboy had stayed, had seen past gender to the person underneath, and in doing so had found not just employment but his true home. That single decision, made on a dusty morning in 1882, had set in motion a chain of events that transformed two lives and created something beautiful and enduring. As Olivia and Cade climbed the porch steps together, she looked out one last time at the land she had fought so hard to keep. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and peaceful, a testament to everything they had built together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new work, new joys. But tonight, standing beside the man she loved in the home they had created, Olivia was simply grateful for the journey they had taken and the life they continued to share. They went inside together, closing the door on the night and the celebration, ready for whatever the future would bring. The cowboy who had stayed and the woman boss who had dared to dream had written their own story, one of love and partnership and unshakable faith in each other. And that story would echo through the generations that followed, a reminder that sometimes the best choices are the ones that go against convention, and that true love is built not in grand gestures but in the daily decision to stand together, no matter what comes.